Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is now Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler. We're carrying on our look at the games of the great Italian player Sergio Mariotti, the Italian Fury. And we are coming back to Mariotti beating really strong players. Well, he beat Gligoric, the magnificent Yugoslav player, in 1969. A couple of years later, would Gligoric get his revenge? Well, we'll see how it turned out. Mariotti is white, Gligoric is black, and this is at Venice, 1971. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Bishop c4, the Italian game from an Italian grandmaster. Bishop c5, but not a quiet one. It's b4, the Evans Gambit. So interesting. I don't think it was really played that much at the time. So must come as somewhat of a shock to Gligoric. But he reacted quite okay. Bishop takes b4, c3, bishop a5, and now d4. And here Gligoric played e takes d4. Nowadays the engines prefer d6, which is actually Lasker's way of playing. You meet queen b3 with queen d7, and after castles you play bishop b6. You're just getting all your pieces nice and safe, and you've also got this extra threat of knight a5 picking up the bishop pair. Basically, it looks like white can manage to regain the pawn, but black is very, very comfortable. And there have been a number of high-class games with these openings. So that is all possible. But Gligoric took on d4, which is not terrible either. Castle kingside, bishop b6, c takes d4 and d6. And well, I mean, what have we got really? I mean, black's brought the bishop back to safety. Little bit behind in development. It's going to need to get the knight out and to castle kingside. White's got a double pawn centre, but there's nothing crazy happening at the moment. It's just the double pawn centre giving some long-term potential and also a few short-term threats. I mean, d5 is possible. e5 will be possible when the knight comes to f6. That's black's got to watch out for all that stuff. What Mariotti went for was just quite a quiet continuation here. Played h3 to stop bishop g4. Just make sure that the black can't free his position easily with exchanges, and just make sure that the d4 pawn is safe. Knight f6 from Gligoric. And rook e1 from Mariotti. Knight c3 was completely possible as well, and is actually the engine preference. I think bishop a5 is what the engines want, and then knight d5, threatening bishop g5. So we get h6, knight f6, queen f6, a4 castles, rook a3. Was a game of who was white in this one. This was Stockfish against Torch, and actually Stockfish ended up beating Torch from this position. I mean, well, yeah, have a little look how it went. It was quite instructive, really. Bishop b4, the rook comes over to a3, queen to c2, bishop b2, bishop a2, and the bishop comes round to b1, and king h7 was played. You're going to meet e5 with g6 most likely, but now g4, and you start attacking with maybe g5 or get the knight out of the way and play f4. Somehow, this is black's a pawn up indeed, but it's not easy at all to get out the white position at all. Those that double pawn centre really does a great job of keeping the black pieces at bay, and in the end Stockfish won this game. So you can see the sort of long-term compensation that the white actually has in this position. You've just got to try and stop black from getting at your central pawns, really try and keep them solid, and then if you're lucky, then that's just going to be a really lovely basis for a long-term attack. So rook e1 maybe not completely necessary. It's but a perfectly decent move. h6 from Gligoric. Yeah, I mean, you could also castle first, but Gligoric wanted to be super safe, stopping bishop g5, often transposed. The engine's often playing h6 anyway later. Bishop a3 from Mariotti, not the engine's favourite move. They're more into playing knight c3 and a4 and bishop b2. In actual fact, just pieces central, a4 maybe just to tickle out to get a little a5 at some stage, and otherwise just developing towards the centre. Bishop a3 is quite nice. I mean, it's sort of a teasing move, sort of teasing black with the idea that e5 might be strong, but in general it's not that scary really. So yeah, Mariotti just carries on with knight c3. Rook to e8 and rook to c1 from Mariotti. Yeah, the engines are looking at playing rook b1 rather in this position. Just yeah, vaguely looking at the b pawn, vaguely thinking maybe about swinging the rook over some stage. But yeah, I mean, rook c1 is quite decent, really. I mean, as long as black doesn't allow, as long as white rather doesn't allow, any big attack against the center, then the general compensation is always there. So knight h7 was an interesting choice from Gligoric. The knight can come out to g5, try and exchange off the knight on f3, and then d4 is going to be weak, especially with a bishop on a3 not really contributing anything to the defense of the b2 pawn. And here Mariotti did something interesting. The engines were looking at bishop b2 simply, and if knight g5, knight a4, just running after this bishop. If knight takes e4, well, it starts getting quite sharp with here and d5, knight a5, queen d4, knight f6 takes bishop d3. Black is now 2 pawns up, but white's got the 2 bishops pointing towards the king now, and this knight is rather offside as well. Yeah, very sharp position, but quite typical of the sort of things that are happening. What Mariotti did was really interesting as well. He played the move rook e3 here. And now knight a5 was played. Yeah, the idea of having the rook on e3 here is that after knight g5 takes f3, we can have something like rook takes f3 and attack f7. Quite a neat little idea there, really. So knight a5 is played to chase the bishop away from the a2 f7 diagonal. But of course, the knight's not so great on a5. It's not pressuring d4 anymore, and yeah, it's a little bit out on the side. But maybe black can also follow up with bishop e6 and try and put something on c4, for example. And that's what black tries and plays: bishop d3, bishop e6. And queen e2 from Mariotti. Not the favourite move of the engines. The engines were looking more at playing knight a4, and I guess trying to get a pair of bishops as compensation. Actually, after you go knight b6, you're actually threatening to play d5 again. And then you can bring the bishop back to b2 and get that sort of typical position with the bishops pointing towards the king and the knight on a5 rather out of play. After queen e2, yeah, the engines kind of like black. They wanted to go back with knight f6 and just prepare c6 and d5. You get into the center like that, and well, if white doesn't remove that pawn on d5, the knight can go to c4 later as well. It's a good way of getting that knight active. But I mean, these are not easy things to visualize really, and yeah, Gligoric played knight f8, looking to go knight g6 and aim for f4. And this knight on g6 is it's sort of out of the way. It's out of the way of an attack with e5 as it was on f6, also blocking the b1 h7 diagonal. It feels like a decent idea, even though it is a bit slow. But on the other hand, talking about slow, white's pieces are generally okay, but they're not at black's throat. So it's one of those positions where black might have a bit more time than you might realise, simply because white's not really threatening anything. So knight a4 now from Mariotti. Move later, but he's going after the bishop pair here. Now, there's some sensible ideas for black. D5 is the move that appeals to me the most. Just trying to get some sort of foothold in the centre now whilst you can. And yeah, maybe have a look at getting a knight into c4 later. But knight g6 was Gligoric's choice. Knight takes b6, a b6, and d5, and the engine's like white again somehow. We've got that basic structure again. I mean, black can go knight f4 and get this light squared bishop, but the engines aren't worried about that because if black plays the knight here, captures this one, there's a lot less control of e5, so white might even get in e5 himself. So yeah, Gligoric's bishop d7, bishop b2. Again, white not worrying about this at all. Knight f4 played anyway, and queen c2. And yeah, I find this a little bit strange now that the Gligoric doesn't actually take that bishop. I think if you've gone knight f4, you might as well take that bishop somehow. But he played the move c6, and just dealing with a threat against the c7 pawn, and sort of breaking open the center. Yeah, some interesting choices now for white. Mariotti played queen c3, maybe a little bit early. You can always play that move later, really, but it forced black to play f6 just to cover this. So we've got some light squares weaknesses now, around the king. That's not too bad. He took on c6 now. B takes c6 and bishop f1. Yeah, again, the engines were not, they weren't too worried about, black taking on d3 because, well, especially now with the exchange on c6, you've got the open d file, the d6 pawn can be weak as well. So the engines weren't really worrying about that. But from a human perspective, this is very, very natural indeed, and what is this position? Well, I mean, the engines are kind of varying from slightly better for white to slightly better for black, depending on, the precise choice that black and white make on the specific moves. But in general, I mean, from a white point of view, this is quite a nice position. You've got the two bishops. The black king is kind of a little bit weak. This knight, for example, is going to be a nice little target. This one's a bit offside. There's no real threats against the white position, and well, white's got all sorts of things that that he could target. I think in general the position's easier for white to play. I think it is easy for black to go a bit wrong. Gligoric played the move c5. Yeah, I understand it. It's not such a bad move. I mean, the knight might be able to return now c6 to e5. You might actually, start pushing the pawns like this, trying to gain space on the queen side. What the engines wanted actually was to play the move d5 straight away. Just try and break up the center whilst you can. Queen c2 was played b5, interesting move, trying to get the knight into c4. Takes, and rook e1, and yeah, I mean the engines think that this is in principle fine for black, but really the character of the position hasn't changed. White still has the two bishops. There's still that weak king there, that you can hope to target with a lightning attack if black's incautious, or with something with knight h4. And yeah, this knight on a5 is out of the way. It's just a pleasant position for white. Even if it's at times a little better for black, or only just a little bit better for white. After c5, the engines start getting quite interested. Knight h4 played by Mariotti there, obviously teeing up on the king side, looking for maybe a knight f5. Looking to get the rook to g3 when queen takes f6 is going to be a threat. And here Gligoric played the move d5. Yeah, following up on what he did before. The engines don't like this too much. Yeah. When the engines were doing it, that knight was going to be solid on d5, supported by a pawn on c6. It was sort of anchored in the center. Now that you've played c5, you're not anchored in the center. So, that knight is going to be loose and it's going to be under attack. So yeah, it's not so easy. It's still, completely within the bounds of engines holding everything. Just seeing draws at the moment in the engine games I play out, but it's a bit risky, and it feels, certainly from a human point of view, quite loose. So we take on e8, queen e8, and now an interesting move from Mariotti. He played the move queen g3. I was more expecting queen f3. Simply, you gain a tempo and you force black to make a choice about that knight on d5. And that feels quite nice. The knight on d5 isn't solid. Might have to be protected by a piece. Might have to move away. But every decision has a consequence and a certain amount of difficulty involved. So it seemed like a decent move. The engines were looking at bishop c6 actually, which is in a way quite surprising. Okay, you're setting something up, but you are abandoning the f5 square. So now we get the knight in there. Just play a few more moves, queen f7, rook e1, and I'm starting to get quite worried with black. But yeah, the engines think that it's okay. Rook e8, rook d1, and then rook d8, just covering everything, covering that proposed fork on d6, and holding everything. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like white simply. It feels, it feels like something could happen, certainly in a human game. The rook is unprotected, the knight's offside. This bishop's just defending this knight. This knight is pinned. Queen's tied to the defense. The king's a little open. Can't go back to g8 because of knight h6. I mean, yeah, all sorts of little factors that, are maybe, they're not crucial for an engine, but for a human player getting into time trouble could be quite nasty. So queen f3 was what I was expecting, but queen g3 is, also a decent move. I mean, looking at g7 and, looking to link up with a bishop against the g7 square. And I do think it's quite typical of Mariotti. I mean, I think noticed it a number of times that he likes these sort of non-forcing moves in his attacks. So rather than play the obvious move that might force black, into a certain path, he likes to leave things as open as possible and give the opponent the chance to make the mistake. And it must be said, that works pretty well. Queen e4 was played by Gligoric, and the engines consider that to be quite a serious mistake. They're looking at rook d8, I suppose, looking somehow to consolidate the knight on d5 when it's attacked. But the line they were looking at was bishop d3, and now the move g5, which is pretty out there. I mean, to me that looks like desperation, but for the engines it's fine, it's all good. f4 from white, just breaking things open. Knight takes f4, bishop f6, and now a key move, knight h5, forking the queen and bishop. Quite incredible. And apparently this seems to be some sort of draw by repetition here somehow. But yeah, king h7 and then queen d3, I think. But yeah, pretty crazy this stuff somehow. It's very hard for Gligoric to guess any of this, which I think shows the power of Mariotti's move queen g3. It's so queen e4 played. And now a move I thought was excellent from Mariotti, but it's apparently not the best. Mariotti played rook d1, which again is one of those non-forcing moves. You're just adding a little piece of pressure on the knight on d5, and then you're saying to black, find a way, find out what you want to play here. The engines actually think that you can start going in for a big attack here with queen g6, queen check, king f7, bishop g6, king e6, queen g7. But yeah, I mean, this is very, very complicated indeed. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't guess that this is fine. This is good for white, even very strong somehow. The line they're looking at actually, just to show you how incredible it is, it's queen a4, stopping white from playing rook d1, and then the move bishop h5, which threatens both stuff like bishop g4 and also protects the d1 square, so you can play rook d1. But it's pretty crazy, all this. So certainly don't blame Mariotti for that. And this move rook d1 is a really nice human move. Just pin the knight to the bishop. Queen f4 is no longer possible, of course. And black's got to decide, is that bishop going to go here? Is it going to go here? Who knows? There's always the threat of bishop d3 as well. Very, very worrying. So rook e8 was what Gligoric went for, and now the engines are saying plus 2.3, and the way that Mariotti plays it from now on is really, really impressive. So yeah, again, these two non-forcing moves, Queen G3, Rook D1, very typical, I feel, of Mariotti, the way that Mariotti attacked. Yeah, I mean they've just proven their strength somehow. And yeah, remember, I mean, Gligoric was really, really strong, you know, absolutely at the top of the world game in his prime at this time. And yeah, he's just being, you know, he's just being bullied all over the place somehow. So Bishop D3, Queen A4. So yeah, this is how, you know, Gligoric is trying to gain some time at least for defense, attacking the rook on D1. And now, yeah, we get some very nice combinations from Mariotti. So it starts off with Bishop H7 check. King takes, Rook D5. Feels a little bit weird and a little bit upsetting, really, to give up your light squared bishop, where you thought you were gonna line up along the B1 H7 diagonal and give it up for a knight. But by getting rid of the knight, you know, that was Black's probably best defensive minor piece. You know, defending the F6 square. You've got rid of that, and you've still got threats because of the knight on H4 of going Queen G6 and then Bishop F6, and this Bishop F6 is much more powerful because the knight on D5 has disappeared. So now it gets very, very subtle indeed. The best defense was to play Rook E1 check and now Rook E7, and not Rook E7 immediately, as in the game. But I'll show you the game continuation and then point out what the difference was. Yeah, you know, this would be very, very difficult to figure out. Rook E7 was played by Gligoric, just defending the bishop to free the queen, and also defending the G7 pawn. Bishop takes F6. Wow. Doink. So that's a little bit scary. G takes F6. We've got Queen G6. You wouldn't mind playing Rook F7 check here. But after that, Queen G6 check, King H7, Knight F5 is really, really strong. I mean, threats everywhere, right? Knight H6, Knight G7. And if you go Bishop F5, then we've got Rook D8 check. What was the difference then? Why should Black have gone Rook E1 check first? You might be able to start getting an inkling of it. After Bishop F6, Rook F7, if you go Queen G6, King G8, Knight F5, we have the move! Queen F4 check, which kind of messes all that up. So, you know, that was the real saving resource that Black needed. So that's why Black needed to play the move Rook E1 check first and Rook E7 after. Very hard to spot because, you know, Black's queen could potentially come around to D1 at some stage. And you sort of think, oh, you know, it would be nice to have a tempo on the back rank in order to be able to get the queen back with tempo or something. Or maybe via Queen A2 takes to B1 or something. So, yeah, I mean, you've really got to be calculating incredibly well to be able to spot this. I'm not sure. I can't think of many human players who'd be able to do that. Certainly not with little time. With a lot of time, maybe. So Bishop F6. And then Gligoric actually had a fantastic idea here, which was to play the move Queen E4. And it ticks a lot of boxes, this move. I mean, you're re-centralizing the queen, and you're attacking a rook on D5, countering the attack by the bishop on the rook on E7. And you're also covering this G6 square. So now it's impossible for white to put anything on the G6 square because the queen is covering it. You know, there's always in the distance, not yet, of course, but, you know, the thoughts of counterplay with Queen B1 and Rook E1 later, and actually attacking this white king along the first rank. And well, I mean, you're attacking the rook on D5, you're attacking the bishop on F6. So, you know, white's really got to do something. But here, Mariotti, I'm definitely going to stop the video here, or you should stop the video here if you want to do a tactical test, because Mariotti comes up with something quite incredible, something that basically should be impossible. And that move is Knight to G6. That is the move. So what on earth is the point of that? I mean, I said that white couldn't put the any piece on G6 because Queen E4 had covered it. Well, Mariotti just goes away and ignores it completely. Well, if you go g takes f6 first of all, then knight takes e7. And the nice point is that the knight's defending the rook on d5. And if you go queen e7, I've got the venomous queen d3 check, forking the king, and we're going to pick up the bishop on d7 with a complete win. So that's really, really ugly for black. The best line would seem to be queen takes d5, but then we go knight e7, queen f7, and again this move queen d3 check. So hitting the king and the bishop, king h8, and then we take, and we go queen takes d7. And well, it's just indeed an extra pawn for white to queen and knight versus queen and knight endgame. But yeah, the king's very open, and there's a lot of checks, which means that some loose pawns will definitely drop off. And yeah, the engines were basically adamant that this was completely winning. No doubt at all. You're going to follow up with queen g4 check next and knight f5. Just put your pieces in nice attacking squares and then see how on earth black is going to defend all his pawns. So that would have been the best way of defending. But yeah, I guess that Gligoric was short of time and sort of totally in panic by now. And he played the move queen takes g6. But that's really easy. He just played bishop takes e7. And hey presto, white is simply the exchange up for zero compensation. So how did Gligoric try to survive? Well, he played bishop e6, looking at the a2 pawn there, rook d6, just pinning it, and we're going to try and go rook takes b6. It's going to be very hard for black to hold the c5 pawn because his knight's offside as well. He's not only got to keep his pawn on c5, he's also got to avoid losing his knight on a5. So yeah, I mean, for example, something like here, and then bishop takes a2, rook b6. We're threatening bishop c5. We're also threatening rook a6 as well. So yeah, it's very unpleasant for black. Queen f7 was played by Gligoric, and now rook takes b6. If queen e7 will have it was queen e5, wasn't it? Queen e5 here, and there's simply a pin here, so nothing for black to do. It's amazing how all those tactics work out just perfectly. And after knight c4, just rook b7, and there we are. The bishop is defended, and after bishop f5, we play rook c7. We put the rook defended by the queen, and the bishop is free to move away. Gligoric played one more move, probably just made move 40. And after bishop b4, he resigned. This bishop is coming round to c3, and that really will be curtains. I thought that was a very nice game, actually. Again, really classy. It's not like Gligoric is falling into some opening trap. It's not like Gligoric was winning, was outplaying his opponent, and then got caught by an attack. Simply, it's a complicated middle game where Mariotti sacrificed the pawn in the opening for long-term compensation, and that long-term compensation has come through. Basically, the two bishops, the weaknesses on the king side, and Mariotti unable to deal with it. But what I particularly learned from, I think, was the way that Mariotti avoided these non-forcing attacking moves, and just was putting pressure on without giving black an easy way to defend, without making it clear for black where he should put his pieces. And that just led to, well, collapse basically. Queen e4 first of all, not an obvious mistake. Rook e8, also not an obvious mistake. But the exploitation was incredible. I mean, this bishop f6, queen e4, knight g6. These are phenomenal tactics. They're really, really good. If I spotted them during a game, I would be so proud of myself. It's I was a good tactician. It's not like that wasn't my part of the game. I mean, this is really high class tactics. And well, it just led, to one of the best players in the world losing his head completely, not able to offer any resistance, and Mariotti finished it off very nicely. Really, really nice game, and it just meant that Gligoric did not get his revenge for 1969. Actually, it went from bad to worse, and he ended up losing a second game against Mariotti. So there we are. I hope you're enjoying that. Another great game, I think. In a Gambit, Evans Gambit, nice to see. If you're enjoying the series, then do give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends. Take a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics, full of classic games like this, but analysed with the engines, full of new insights. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.